Hi everyone, it's Jen again. Hope you're all having a good week. This week was a bit of a challenge. I'm still struggling with some health issues and things at work have been busy, but I'm happy to report that I did make some good leeway with getting into chapter 3. I'm going to be showing some time lapse of the sprite work I was doing this week. And you're going to see a bit of my process that I do reference my own sprites a lot while I'm working, especially with this project since I haven't drawn these characters very much, just to kind of be a little bit more consistent with their details and proportions and all that kind of stuff. I'm fighting a bit with my voice and with my cat, my poor considerate cat who's probably worried about me right now. But is also getting in the way of my recording, so I apologize. I'm going to try to get through this the best I can and not meander around too much. What I really want to talk about today is the idea of, or what I feel like is the loss of the idea of leisure in modern day life. I have the privilege, the experience, the oldness of being alive at a time before the internet, and things were kind of like the cliched, a parent goes to work and comes home and dabbles in their garage, tinkering on something that never really quite gets finished or seems to even make any progress. There was a lot of passively watching TV as well, but back then there wasn't like on demand, so usually there would only be so many hours in a day that the TV would be playing something that you wanted to watch. So people would still have a lot of time for hobbies. With my mother, she would paint ceramic objects that sometimes she would give away as gifts or sometimes use around the house as decorations. But it was never like a side hustle or like a business that she was trying to do. She literally just did it because it was just kind of like a fun way for her to express some of her creativity, along with knitting or reading along the same vein as any of those types of activities. And when I was growing up and I was drawing, it wasn't like, oh yay, someday she can be a paid artist and work in some sort of art industry. It was really just, oh yay, she's staying out of trouble and not hurting herself. I was really thinking to myself, why does this feel different now? What about today feels different than it felt back then? And am I just looking at this with old lady glasses, with progressive lenses, and and just romanticizing the past or something? And for me, it really came down to a couple of different concepts that I feel like I've seen shift a little bit over time. And again, this is all just my anecdotal experiences and observations, so please feel free to tell me if you think I'm wrong. Productivity, leisure, consumption, decompression, permission. So these are the concepts that I'm going to try to describe what my observations have been and what I lament as the loss of leisure, is that productivity has always been something that I think humanity enjoys, that we thrive on. But in the society that we live in now, productivity is all about ownership. Productivity is all about what we make for consumption. And most of the time, it's what we make for consumption for others to consume. That we lost a sense of ownership in our own productivity, that our productivity belongs to others. And we have to give up that ownership in order to have a piece of resources back. So the way that capitalism works is that there's the ownership class, there's the worker class, and the worker class makes a surplus. That they basically lost the ownership of their own production, so they contribute a certain amount of production and then they're allowed to have some of the resources from the ownership class that wouldn't have those resources without the productivity of the worker. I would argue that this mindset has infiltrated every aspect of our lives, in that the sense that when I made the jump, I guess, from working on art as an amateur or as a student or whatever you want to call it, back then the art belonged to me. No, you could argue because nobody else wanted it, but I still had ownership over my own art. And then when I started working professionally, then the art was no longer mine. And I noticed there was this very subtle shift in my mindset that happened over time. That it wasn't that I didn't enjoy drawing. I don't think at any point I would have said that I don't enjoy drawing. But then there was times that I would not feel like drawing, but I would have to draw. And indeed, there would be times that I would feel like drawing, but I would feel guilty for drawing anything that wasn't drawing for the clients or for the owners of the art, right? Or you could even say the prospective owners of the art, because maybe I would be making something that wouldn't be for a specific client request, but was something that I was trying to make marketable. It still wasn't like what I wanted to necessarily make, but it was something that I felt would be for somebody else, even if that somebody else was imaginary. This is where my mindset shifted very subtly from seeing art as leisure to something that was work, discipline, a job, responsibility. Fine and good. And there's nothing wrong with these words in and of themselves, but they have something that is different from leisure in that they make you tired. Can't do it all the time. Leisure is different because when you don't feel like doing something as leisure, then you just don't do it anymore and there's no guilt. There's nothing wrong with leisurely working on something and failing and not making any progress or not having anything to show for it, because that wasn't the point of it. By modern standards, you can't measure leisure. You don't sell or consume leisure. It just is yours. Your time, your effort, your productivity that leads to wherever it's going to lead, and it doesn't even really matter because the process is what mattered. And I was thinking more and more about how people say they are tired and they wish they could do XYZ, or they want to do XYZ, but they're just too tired. And I think that comes from a culture that encourages us or pressures us to monetize everything for consumption, to give up our ownership to show that it has any value. And I guess I just want to say that your leisure time is the most valuable time that you can give yourself, I believe, in this life. Who have surplus money know this because they hire out other people's time so that they can have more time for their own leisure. And that leisure is not necessarily just sitting around passively consuming whatever doom scrolling thing that you might be doing on your phone. They are doing things that give them a sense of intrinsic enrichment that they don't have to necessarily be accountable for, but they are enriching themselves in some way or another. A lot of people can do great things when they suddenly have time for leisure, because leisure is productive. So sometimes that productivity can manifest like lightning in a bottle and make something absolutely brilliant. Once you put that expectation of creating something that is going to be a consumable, valued commodity to the rest of society, you are putting that pressure on leisure, where it is no longer going to be leisure, it is going to be work. And work makes you tired. That, I think, is where people have kind of lost that sense of leisure, because they don't give themselves the permission, the freedom, and the space to just put in effort and time into something that is for the process itself and nothing else. Don't worry about posting it online. Don't worry about getting affirmation from it. Just doing something and putting effort into something because it feels good to you and it was something you want to do, and whatever comes from it can come from it. And yes, it's definitely coming from a place of privilege, because if you don't have time to waste, then you don't have time for leisure. I would argue that I am not a very financially well-off person. I still make time for leisure. It is a sacrifice and it is a boundary, and I do have to fight for it. But I just strongly believe that it is the best spent time. The best gift I can give myself is my own time and effort. My time and effort, so much of it is given to other people. If I can give to myself without guilt, without pressure, it's really Maybe it's egotistical of me, but I feel like my effort really means something. At least it means it to me. It's like my drawings when I was little. Maybe this is garbage to everybody else, but I believe in my effort. I believe in my time is valuable. And so if I can give myself some of that time and effort, what better way to treat myself? There's like no amount of like coffee or chocolates or video games that can really replace that for me. It sounds simple. It sounds like that should be like really easy to do, but it has taken me years, I don't know, maybe decades, to be able to rediscover that audacity that I had in my youth to just give myself my own time and effort. Because somewhere along the line, society conditioned me to feel like I'm not allowed to waste time on myself, that I should be always in some type of like hustle or grind mindset. And if I have time and energy to waste on myself, then that time and energy should be spent to something more measurably productive. Whether that be, you know, doing work for other people for monetary compensation, or even just like, I don't know, cleaning my house or something. Like, there's always like other chores that can be done, right? Something external, something that other people can judge and can see that time was well spent. I trust myself enough now that I can spend my time wasting on myself, and that you know, that I'm allowed that, and that me wasting time is not going to ruin my life. It's not going to ruin the lives of others. I'm still taking care of my responsibilities. I still have time and energy to set my priorities straight for, you know, providing for my material needs and for my family and stuff like that. There's added pressure as a parent, especially, that any extra time and energy that I have should be spent on my son, for his development, especially when he was smaller. There's a lot of guilt and burden placed on mothers, especially, that we're never doing enough. And I guess right now I'm at a point in my life where I can look at my son and I can also trust him to, you know, be able to develop his own time and energy into himself, that he really doesn't need me to be pulling him along with a leash the whole way. None of this was applicable to your life and your goals, but if you are somebody who has been wanting to get started on some type of creative endeavor or hobby but feels like you never have the time and energy for it, I would just encourage you, the next time you feel like too tired and you just feel really guilty about wasting your time, maybe even watching YouTube's videos like this one instead of getting started on the hobby or the project that you have always wanted or dreamed or thought about pursuing. Just instead of watching the videos or passively consuming to decompress, next time just give yourself permission to waste that time looking into or starting or failing that hobby, that passion pursuit, that thing that you always wanted to start. Just give yourself permission to dabble in it as much as you feel like it, without making any progress, without being held accountable by anybody, and just see where that takes you. For me anyways, even if that time was spent in complete failure, completely not having anything to demonstrably show for it, it still felt better to me than doom scrolling. All right. As always, don't forget to join the process. Have a great week coming up. And yeah, thanks for listening to my rambling thoughts. Bye-bye now.